Welcome to Every Step Podcast. I'm Krystyna Weston.
And I'm Judith Beck.
Every Step is the podcast where career and life meet.
Now, today we are talking about toxic people. We've all have them at some stage in our lives. They could be a friend who we have known forever, a family member, a neighbor, or a coworker. In fact, over the years, when speaking with thousands of people I have in my executive search business, a toxic coworker is almost a guaranteed sometime in your career.
I think we've all had them.
Exactly. Now, today, Krystyna and I are going to share our experiences about toxic people and our views about the best ways to handle a toxic person. We're not experts, but we've had a lot of experience, and hopefully what we discuss today will help you navigate, eliminate, or avoid a toxic relationship. I mean, how many have we had, Krystyna? We can't even count.
Oh, look, it's part of the human condition, right? It's just part of being a human that you're going to cross paths with somebody who has or exhibits some level of toxicity.
Absolutely. And the older you get, the more you gather.
No, I think the older you get, the better we are at boundary management, I think.
Absolutely. Well, in my recent trip back to the States, a friend of mine gave me a book that hit the nail on the head, and it's called How to Deal with Toxic People by Gregory L. Jantz, Ph.D. with Kevin Wall. And you can get it on Amazon. It cost about $5. And literally, there's like 100 pages. And I went, yes. That's it. In it, he says the hallmark of toxic behavior is that it frequently keeps one off balance through its consistency by, now see if these things are familiar, deflecting blame or responsibility.
Oh, it's never their fault. Gee whiz, never their fault.
Never their fault.
Always your fault.
100%. Playing on the goodwill or guilt of others. Does that sound familiar?
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Outright gaslighting, making others feel as if they are dysfunctional ones. And let me give you a little bit of history, and I didn't know this, how gaslighting got its name. It was from a 1944 film called Gaslight, where the husband manipulates his wife into thinking she is mentally ill. And what he does, he dims their gas-fueled lights. And then when she questioned it, he then goes, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You're always, doing things like this. So making her think she's crazy.
I didn't know that's where the term came from. That's interesting. I always wondered where it derived from.
I know, because we hear it all the time now. And it seems like it's just popped up as well.
Yeah.
Like this new phrase where, new phrases are usually from old sources.
Yeah. I think that a lot of the toxicity, people can be toxic and do really bad things, and it's really to others, and it's really easy to judge them. But a lot of these people have an underlying trauma, or they have a mental health issue that really has gone unrecognized or untreated. That doesn't mean that it excuses their bad behavior, and I think we need to differentiate that. But it is important to realize that often it's because they're either unwell, or they have a narcissistic disorder of some sort, or they've got mental health issues. But let's talk a little bit about how these people make you feel, and maybe some of our listeners will recognize some toxic people in their lives as we talk about how they make us feel. So one of the signs of a toxic person is that they make you feel really exhausted or drained. They're energy sappers, they're energy vampires. You're absolutely exhausted because either they've got a drama the whole time, or it's all about them, or, there's a whole range of different traits of toxicity, but you're left feeling shattered. So when they ask you to hang out with them or be in a business meeting with them, you're already on tenterhooks going, oh my God, I already know how I'm going to feel when I walk out of this meeting or walk out of this catch up with this friend. So maybe you avoid them. So that's one. Maybe some of you are recognizing that. they also have a habit of making you feel kind of less confident. They're very good at pushing you down and making you question yourself. I was watching MasterChef, and not to say that this is a toxic person thing, but there was a woman that was doing a cook, and she was in a group with a bunch of others, and she knew what she wanted, but the other voices said, no, this is how you do it. I know best. I'm the expert. And she questioned her judgment. So she followed them rather than following her gut. And actually, she was right and they were wrong. But this is when some people who always have to be right, and that's often a sign of toxicity, they can make you feel a lot less confident about yourself.
Absolutely.
Another trait.
That can happen in work all the time too, like in a work environment.
Absolutely.
You've got to, be confident about your idea, because you will get that toxic person who will go, oh no, that's a silly idea.
That's a stupid idea. Or really, do you think that'll work? So, and that can come from a range of different places. Maybe they're insecure. Maybe you had an idea that they wished was theirs and it was actually yours. So they're wanting to make you look small to make them feel bigger or more important. There's a whole range of different drivers, but you probably know someone in your world that has done that to you and just made you feel small, or not as smart, or not to trust your judgment. And I think when you're doing innovation and when you're doing bleeding edge things, you really just need to follow your gut, because that's where good change and good innovation happens. But if you're surrounding yourself with people who always have to be right, or people who are insecure, then they're going to make you feel like you don't know anything.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you've got to stand by your convictions and not let them overrun you. And that's hard, especially when you're a new person into a team or into an organization, or it can even be a family, or a group of friends where, you kind of feel like they have ganged up on you because the toxic person has convinced the other ones that's the way to go. So then you feel like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't. And we'll go into a little bit about that in the work environment, about what to do about that. But one of the things...
The social stuff can even be sledging. It can even be gentle sledging. And we see that in some sports. I've taken up golf recently, and I listened to the women that are playing pennant and how they're strategizing. And they actually gently sledge each other to try and undermine somebody's confidence. That's not cool. But people do that to win. So it happens in social. People do it in a social context. People do it in a sporting context to try and undermine others' security about their own game, their own competency. Yeah, it's all born from insecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that you said about physically or emotionally drained after spending time together, I mean, that is such a major sign. If you just dread the fact that you're going to see that person because they're going to be emotionally draining, or after that, there is so much research and around that you can draw upon about how that triggers major stress inside of you.
Absolutely.
that leads to illness. I mean, you got to take care of yourself and try to distance yourself from those people. We'll talk about how to do that.
How many people, listeners out there, how many of you see the phone ringing and you look at it and you see who it is and you go, oh, can't deal with that person right now. Can't take that call. And in the moment when you're looking at that phone ringing, your stomach starts to churn. I can feel my stomach churning now just thinking about it. It's like...
I mean,
that's a sign, folks. That's a sign.
Because we're older, we're actually probably a little bit better, or better dealing with it, only because we've gone through the trials and tribulations, and we've had support groups, people give us an advice. But one of the things that I notice with toxic people is the constant drama. Everything's an issue. It's everyone else's fault. There's no consideration for others. And what I call no spatial awareness. I feel this is a big thing because toxic people, it's like the people around them aren't there. They don't have any awareness of the people around them. So I'll give you an example of that. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. The people at the airport, and those are the ones that are speaking loudly on the phone as if they're the only ones there.
I'm so important. I'm so important. The whole world has to hear how important I am.
Exactly. Instead of finding a place where they can talk quietly, that's a prime example of what I believe is a toxic personality. If someone is so unaware about their spatial awareness, about who's around them, who can hear them, how they're being perceived. They always speak loudly at a restaurant, and they're the ones that always complain that nothing is happening fast enough from the moment that they arrive. Or here's a big one, or they're the person who will never ask you how you were doing. They don't know anything about your life.
Yep.
But they know, but everything about them. How much they make, what they're buying, where they've traveled to, even though you never ask them, right? So they're big noters and promoters who brag about everything that they did, but they don't know anything about,
I learned this expression a long time ago, sunflower, black cat. And what that expression means is that when somebody's got a story of winning or success, their story is bigger and better. Or if you've got a story of woe, their story of woe is bigger and better. So it's always about them. And it's about how, if you say, oh, I got a raise. Oh, do you know what? I got a raise. And they're not even listening to you. It's all about them.
That is so true. Instead of not squashing your moment and going, congratulations, you got a raise. Well done. You've obviously have done well at your job. They would be the ones that say, oh yeah, I remember when I did this and I blah, blah. And they totally bypass your moment. That is, and I think what we're saying here, these are people who continually do this.
Yeah.
Continually, not once in a while. I think all of us.
We're all guilty of doing some of these things at let's face it, right? We're all guilty of doing aspects of this at various times in our lives, because there are times when we do just want to make it about us. We do want to have a pity party, right?
But it's a pattern. It's a pattern that happens all the time where someone who, for example, constantly needs to be right, and they don't get the other person's view. And if they are proven wrong, then they downplay what the issue was. But if they're proven right, that's all you hear about. So
confirmation bias. Yeah, they're not going to. People don't want to listen to different perspectives. They just want to listen to things that support their view.
That's exactly. And if you're dealing with a toxic person, if they give you a gift, you need to think about at what cost. Because a toxic person who gives you a gift, when something happens, they'll remind you of it. Or if they lent you money or something like that, it's not, it becomes a gift with strings.
With strings, yeah. And interestingly, sometimes you don't even realize there's strings attached. And I had this happen to me in the last couple of years, where I got invited to do something and I thought that this was a gift because I had similarly gifted this person in the same way a few years before. And I won't give too many details so that we don't disclose too much about who it is. And then I had it thrown back in my face that I wasn't grateful for this gift and I should have paid for it, when actually I understood it to be a gift. So it's really interesting. There's this manipulative element. And I think what happens when you're on the receiving end of a toxic person, they really make you feel bad about yourself, and they make you confused about what you should believe in and what your boundaries should be. And they have you second guessing. They really mess with your head in such a way that you start to feel that actually your thoughts and your feelings and what's important to you doesn't matter, and that you should be focusing all on them. And if it's not all about them and solving their problems and fixing them and kowtowing to them, it's really tricky maintaining a business relationship or a friendship with somebody who displays these toxic behaviors. It's really, really challenging.
That is so true. And I think it's because, well, one, we're empathetic people, and usually people, like us will want to make sure other people are okay, and that there's, and then we do walk away from those situations feeling like, could I have done more? Should I have been more forward? Should I have been more giving? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? I mean, I think, and I have to say, I don't know.
That's really true.
But
it's really true what you're saying.
I think in your 30s and your 40s, this becomes even a bigger issue, because I mean, we still have it now, but we know how to probably deal with it a little bit better. And because I can remember, during those days, especially work, where there were people in my early career who were definitely toxic. And this is before I started my own business. And, I had to get to the point where I just had to say no. You just have to get to that point to say no. And then trial and error is a lot, because if you don't have a good support network of people outside your organization who can give you some advice and who can clearly identify toxic relationships, that really helps, obviously, if you do have someone. But I think you're still going through that journey and that learning experience, that a lot of it's new. You don't necessarily know how to handle it.
I think, like a lot of toxic relationships, and I'm going to call this workplace one probably the subtle bully. It's just little things. It's a little bit like when you're in a bad relationship, personal relationship, where somebody is trying to control you in some way. It's not big enough for you to make a complaint about, and it's not big enough for you to make a big deal out of it, but it's a little bit here, and then it's a little bit there, and then it's a little bit there, and a little bit there. And before you know it, you've actually changed your behavior. You've changed your confidence when you're around this person, and you change a whole bunch of things, but it's happened over time. So it's like the frog in the boiling pot. If it starts cold, you don't realize it, but if the temperature goes up and up and up and up, it's boiling and you don't even realize it because you've been in the pot the whole time. And I think that's what happens with toxic people. And I've been in toxic personal relationships. I've been in toxic relationships with business partners and with people in the workplace. And some of it can be so subtle that it's actually not enough for you to raise a complaint with HR.
That makes a very good point. I mean, it's very, you've got toxic people as well in a work environment where they expect you to be on tap. They expect you to help them the whole time. It's not just work, it's also personal as well. They expect you to be on tap. So when they're going through an issue, you're expected to be at their beck and call. But then if you have an issue, they're nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
Or you're making too much of a deal out of it.
Yeah.
Again, turn it around, like, why?
Flip it. Yeah. And I think the more self-aware you are as a person, the more empathetic, back to your point, Judith, the more empathetic you are and the more you reflect as a human being, unfortunately, the more vulnerable you are to these toxic people, because you will go, is it me or is it them? Maybe it is me. Maybe it is me. Maybe I am. Maybe I did something. Because when you're that kind of person, you're going to look at yourself first rather than go, actually, no, that behavior is not okay. And I think the challenge is to actually call them out on their behavior, not publicly, because that's not a great thing to do. That'll backfire on you. But pull them aside and go, hang on, like, really? Didn't appreciate the way you did. Do we have a problem? Let's talk about it.
I'm a firm believer, do not accept bad behavior. you know, that if someone's being toxic, because it, you know, you get to this point, you know, you have to one, you have to learn to set the boundaries. You have to learn to say no, not let them get to you, and also say it's them, not me. Start learning how to say it's them, not me, and don't accept their bad behavior and call it out. So that, I think, is really, really important. And, you know, if somebody's really toxic, like in this book, there are so many variations of toxic people. And I actually have known people who have had all those traits, right? Not just one or two. They've had all of them. So, you know, the typical narcissist type person as well. And the thing is that a lot of times people will, you know, if they don't know that person really well, and that person is being toxic to you, then you'll hear things like, oh, that's just the way they are, or that's just their personality, or because they haven't had that experience. Once they start to have that experience, then they'll see what you mean. But I think I've gotten to the point over the years where I've just gone no, where I no more, and that's it. And the other thing that you need to look out for with toxic people, once they know they can't get to you, then they'll start getting to and influencing people around you as well. So you have to be aware of that as well, that they may, especially if you're in a friend group, then they may influence, they might, I can't get a hold of it, but now I'll start influencing the other people and start. So you need to stay close to people.
And that's so true. And this is what happened in another scenario, similar scenario, where this person had this issue with me, didn't talk to me about it, didn't raise the issue with me, told all their friends, who I know some of them through corporate as well. So these other people now have this judgment based on a fake story of this toxic person. These people are really unwell. I think that's the thing to remember, is they're actually not well. But the challenge is that in their unwellness, they still can have a pretty devastating impact on your life or your career or your friendship circles. I think what you've said is really, really valid, Judith, is being aware. But then you don't want to start going to those people and going, oh, you know, so-and-so's, you know, lost the plot.
That's right.
That's not going to help either, right?
No, that's not going to help. That's not going to help. You just need to be self-aware. I used to say when I was running a business that you know, the reality is, if people are non-performers, like these are people that I would interview for other jobs at other companies when I was doing executive search, eventually they get found out. Mm-hmm. Eventually, you know, they might come in with all the bells and whistles and they're great on paper, but if they're non-performers, eventually they will get found out. So it's really and you know, if people had a bad experience with someone, then it's likely other people have had bad experiences with them eventually.
Correct.
And I remember this one time when this one guy was having a big issue with his boss, because bosses obviously can be toxic too. And basically what he was doing was gaslighting him, and he was doing a lot of things that we're talking about here in this book, the know-it-all, the whole 9 yards. And he was really, you know, he didn't know what to do. And I said, you just need to do the old conversation confirmation. It's not hard. When you have a conversation with your boss, you put it in an email, confirm it. Because if you have a good idea, it needs to be known that it was your idea 6 months down the track or 12 months down the track. Otherwise, they're likely to take credit for it. So paper trail, paper trail, paper trail. And you have to put that detail into those situations with people you can't trust.
I couldn't agree with you more, Judith. I think that whole cover thy butt, and it should just be a regular practice if you're dealing in corporate environments or any kind of business environments. You know, thanks for the chat today. Just following up on, I've agreed to do this. We talked about this, blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely. And if also going back to that financial part, where if someone who is a toxic person in your view, they give you something as a gift, or they say, oh, well, I'll lend you this $10,000 for you to go buy your car. That needs to be in writing too. What are the terms and conditions of this? Because 12 months later, they may say, well, I thought you were going to pay me back in 12 months' time.
Yeah.
Well, no, I thought that, you said I could wait till when I could afford it. Well, 12 months is long, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you got this argument going, and it could be with family members. So even with family members, probably even more so, put it in writing. Know what the terms of engagement are. Keep it commercial, so you don't have these big arguments later on. But here's on the flip side, Krystyna.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know if you're not the toxic person?
Ooh, it is about me. I'm the one.
Maybe, Dr. Phil says you can't change what you don't acknowledge.
Well, that's true. If it's in your blind spot, it's in your blind spot. And
It's
I think therein lies the problem, right? Some of these toxic people have just learned to be very clever manipulators, and they've learned that playing by a particular set of rules works for them. So they just keep doing it. They might not actually realize how they're landing on others. I know some people in my life who I know have got a good heart, but it is all about them. And, it's always their problem. It's always their drama. It's always, all the characteristics, but they've got a good heart.
Yes.
So I think part of it is, what's the intent of this person? Are they intentionally?
Maybe they're not toxic. Maybe they're needy.
They might be needy. But how do we know it's not us? That's when you don't
okay,
know.
Here's a little exercise.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. So if you are over, let's say 30, maybe 30-ish and above, think about this. Do you have any friends from high school that you still are in contact with, or university that you still see? Do you have work friends that you have kept in contact with from your first job? Do your friendships last more than a year? Write this down on a piece of paper, because I think it's a good exercise as self-reflection for yourself. Do your friendships last more than a year? Do they all of a sudden break off? Do people, not just one time, make excuses why they can't catch up with you without giving alternatives? So I'm not just saying that, because we all do that.
They're just bailing because they don't really want to be around you.
They're bailing, and then find out why. Now take a piece of paper and write down all your friends and close family, close work colleagues. List what they do. List if they have any children, if you know their names, and any important facts about them. When did you call them last? When did you ask them if they were okay first? When did you give them a compliment or congratulate them for an accomplishment? When did you really listen to them? Now, when you do that exercise and it doesn't look good, and you don't know any information about your colleagues or maybe your cousins or friends or whatever, so you don't even know when they took their last vacation, well, maybe the issue is you to a certain extent. And maybe you should do some self-reflection about, hey, it's just as important for me to put effort into relationships as because these people who I've listed as my friends and my family, and if you don't have anybody listed on that piece of sheet of paper, I'd get myself a career or life coach, because there's a bigger problem there. But if you haven't got a lot of information, that means you haven't asked questions and you've been speaking all the time.
And that's not to be confused with having good boundaries and having a friendship closet clean out. Like I think we don't want to collapse those two issues together, because I think it's really important to have all the things that you've just talked about, Judith, and have those relationships and have that level of caring and understanding. But there are people, and I think the older you get, we become a little bit more selective about, who we do business with. who we have in our friendship circles, and our friendship circles become a little smaller because we kind of go, look, my time is valuable and I want to hang out with people that make me feel good and that I can have a laugh with and that inspire me to be a better version of myself. So that group becomes smaller. So we do see some of our friends and business colleagues kind of gently slip by the wayside. But that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't have this positive engagement and this kind of proactiveness that you've just been talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, we do not have the same amount of friends that we have in our 20s or even 30s that we do in our 40s and 50s. But that's because we have like stayed in contact with the ones that we have really good connections with. We can laugh, we can, when we don't see them, like when I went back to the States, I saw one of my best friends there. It was like I saw her yesterday. And then I saw another one that I grew up with from the time I was 5 years old. And it was like seeing her yesterday. So, those are the kind of connections that last a lifetime. And like, I didn't have to ask them 1,000 questions about what they're doing or what they've done because I already knew.
You pick up where you left off, don't you? I've got friendships like that where I don't see them. I've known them since I was 15, 16, and we might only see each other like sometimes years can go by, other times it's more frequent, and you just pick up where you left off.
You just pick up, and it was funny because there were 3 of us sitting in my girlfriend's kitchen, which was like the center of communication back then, and she's in the same house that when we grew up. And my husband goes, it was just so fun listening to you guys talk about old times like it was yesterday and all the things that you did and how much fun you had and how much fun you were having. And that goes back to that response of recognizing toxic relationships that you said. If you feel physically drained by spending time with someone, well, it's not a good relationship. So you need to distract sort of disengage from that and not put yourself in that position if possible. One of the things that,
especially if it's repeated, I think that's the key thing here. We're all going to have someone that drains us once in a while because we've all got to offload. But if this is repeated,
and you can't see that there will be light at the end of the tunnel. In other words,
they're not changing anytime soon.
They're not changing anytime soon, or it's a constant, battle. Well, we don't need to go into battle all the time. Battles aren't good for us. I've been talking a lot about lately, as I've kind of moved into a new area, I've relocated states and putting a lot of effort into making new friendships. And I talk about finding my tribe. And I think that's what it is now, whether it's work or whether it's your personal life. It's about finding your tribe. And as we say to our dear little dog, who's 2 years old and he wants to be friends with everybody, it's like, mate, not everybody wants to be your friend. So you don't have to be friends with everybody, but you need to find, both in a work context and in a personal context, people that make you feel good about yourself, not people that make you feel small. And you might have to kiss a few frogs and kind of go, this isn't for me. And it's okay to let those things go. And that's part of that boundary management piece. Yes, absolutely.
But you will, if you hang out with all the wrong people who make you feel small, both in a work context and a personal context, you're never going to have the space to find the people that are going to make you feel good about yourself and that you're going to really enjoy hanging out with.
That is so true. And that's one of the, there was one of the things in the book about at work that, toxic people who are the pessimist at work and the gossipers, they'll take every opportunity to bring you down. But you also need to make sure as a employer, as well as a manager, and remember that people who are pessimists and toxic in your team will rub off on the rest of the team. So you got to nip that in the bud quickly. If you can't turn that person around and mentor them and coach them, that their attitude and that the way that they are being perceived is not acceptable, you need to show them the door, because they will ruin your business. They will go in there and they will like gossip, and they'll, it's like a virus in a computer system. They need to go, and that because they're not serving the business, and they're not serving the other people within the organization as well. There's no respect, and respect is really, really important.
It is.
So,
it's very important.
Very, very important. And I think the thing is the things to remember always is that if it's not serving you, if it's not good for you, you need to get something out of a relationship.
Absolutely.
Just as much as being
It's a two-way street. It's a reciprocal thing.
Reciprocal thing. Everything needs to be a benefit. So, if you're not getting that, then that's a sign.
Yeah. And I think just trust your gut. Spend time reflecting. If you're really not sure about if you're in a toxic situation or not, take yourself out of that situation, reflect, and be honest with yourself and listen to your gut. Sometimes it's really hard to let go of toxic people or to eliminate them from your life. But when you do it, it's the best thing. There'll be grief, there'll be challenges. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do. But yeah, choose you. Choose you.
One last thought on a work front, clients. Now, we don't always love our clients.
We can't always choose our clients. Not always.
And we're not always going to get along, and you have to be the same buddy and personnel and all that stuff. But my view with clients over the years is that I had to like and respect my clients. They weren't going to be my friends. Some of them became friends, but all of them aren't going to be your friends. But I had to respect, and I had to be supportive. So when I looked at it, I went, okay, if this person as a client is always trying to get you to cut your price, ask for much more than what the offering is giving, they're not good clients. They're not. There's got to be, again, a equal exchange between a client and an organization, that basically I'm charging you X because I'm giving you this great service and this product, and you're paying me for it. So it's a win-win situation. But if you've got a client who's constantly draining you of time, like what did you call them? Energy vampires.
Energy vampires.
Energy vampires constantly draining your time, which is not profitable.
Or if they're rude.
They're rude, and they say terrible things to your staff. Well, that's enough.
Got to call them on that.
I call them on that. They don't pay on time, so they don't pay for 3 months, and you're constantly chasing them. Again, energy vampires. They're not profitable. Cut them loose, because that time that you're wasting with them could be spent on good clients. Same thing as friends. The time that you're wasting with energy vampires could be spent on the friends that love you.
Exactly.
So I'd recommend to everyone, really get this book. It's so easy to read. It covers everything. Gregory L. Jantz, How to Deal with Toxic People. It's a good little read, and it really covers everything. So, moral of the story. What's the moral of the story, Krystyna?
Choose you.
Choose you. Exactly. Thanks. It's great speaking to you today.
Thanks, everybody. For more information about Every Step and our guests, head to everysteppodcast.com. To be notified of new podcasts, please subscribe via your favourite listening platform. And of course, follow us on social media and direct message us to share your ideas about guests or topics.